One. Hey everyone, my name is Mike Vaughn. I'm a writer at Geek Vibes Nation, and I'm also the author of The Ultimate Guide to Strange Cinema.
And I'm Dillon Gonzalez. I'm the editorial director for Geek Vibes Nation and also a co-host of the Home Dance Film Festival podcast.
And welcome to a new Video Attic new release roundup. As always, we have a lot of fun, pretty wide-ranging titles, but we're going to let you kick it off.
Thank you. Yes, I have one that it's like I had never heard of before this announcement, but I understand why I saw a lot of people very excited about this one. This is I think it's 1994, No Escape from Martin Campbell, the director of like Casino Royale and The Mask of Zorro and other really entertaining, like good blockbuster films. And I was especially interested to check this out because it features or stars the late Ray Liotta, who we lost tragically recently. And he is really good in this movie. I was very entertained. It's a really weird, or not too weird, but a really entertaining sci-fi movie, which I was surprised it didn't like have a bigger cultural presence, like that I hadn't heard of it before. Because the basic conceit is the future, the far off future of 2022. The prisons are like kind of run by corporations, like for-profit prisons, and like Ray Liotta, he's a prisoner in this prison. He's kind of there for, I won't get into the backstory, but he's there for reasons that are kind of murky, and like he's not really like the worst guy. He is doing like bad things for a good reason, basically. But while he's in this prison, he's kind of a rebellious type of prisoner, and he gets on the warden's bad side, and he's sent off to this island, which is it's basically an abandoned island where they send the worst prisoners, and it's almost kind of like has like a Mad Max aesthetic to it, where there's like a leader of like outsiders who like are like have like torches and like a hierarchy of like rule, and then there's like a rival like faction on the island who's like more like have a democratic system of like ruling and stuff, and like there's like it's like warring factions on this island, but like it's not like a period piece. It's like I said, it's more of like a Mad Maxy type of thing. But it's really interesting because there are some like entertaining like dramatic moments of like one group trying to like take down, like survive like attacks from another group and all that type of stuff. But there's also a lot of like kind of like thriller machinations and like survival type scenarios, and like really not like interesting human drama, because Ray Liotta, even though he gets taken in by the more democratic like insiders, he's kind of like a prickly character, and he's not very trusting just because of his past, which is like a classic character trope, like I'm haunted by my past, and I don't want to make myself vulnerable, that type of thing. But when they do eventually get together, it's just a lot of like interesting like planning and like character dynamics. Surprisingly, this seems like the type of movie where they would like force in like an unnecessary like romantic interest, but they don't. It's just like completely like plot driven, which it works. It's a very like snappy movie. It gets things done. So if you like that kind of like warring factions type of movie and like sci-fi, but like not like the weird like out of bounds sci-fi, but like more grounded sci-fi, I think No Escape, like it's a lot of fun. And this comes from Unearthed Classics. And from what I can tell, they don't advertise it as like a new 2K or 4K scan, but it looks really nice. This is the first time it's been on Blu-ray, and I didn't see a lot of like print damage, noise reduction. It has nice film grain. It just looks like a really nice, strong transfer. The audio is really nice, and they assembled a pretty good assortment of special features. They have 3 audio interviews, including a 17-minute interview with producer Gail Ann Hurd, who's produced a lot of like classic science fiction like Aliens and the Terminator, and like she's done stuff with The Walking Dead. There's another audio interview with director Martin Campbell, and then a audio interview with the writer. So there's some nice new interviews. There's a vintage like 28-minute archival featurette, like a making of, and like some trailers and promos and stuff. So it's a pretty nice, well-rounded package. Get a nice slipcover here. So Unearthed Classics. A lot of the stuff that I've seen, I've watched from him. I think the same for you is like really hardcore, gnarly stuff, like a Serbian film or Evil Dead Trap or just tons of stuff. But this one, it's not so hardcore. It's more of like a straightforward, like classic action, lightly sci-fi movie. And I think it's a very entertaining watch. So if you have a reputation in your head for this label of being like squeamish or anything, this one's very approachable for like a wide audience. It's just very entertaining.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I feel like you kind of had me at Ray Liotta, so that's pretty great. And I definitely do like kind of cheesy. You said this is sort of dystopian sort of situation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely need to check that out. My next one, I was a little bit torn and disappointed. I wished it was better, and that is season 2 of Superman and Lois. Before we get into that, I'll show it off here. And we got the back. It does have some nice features, and I do really appreciate the fact that this isn't just getting dumped out. We'll take the slipcover off. It would have been like really cute if like the back was his cape. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
I mean, wouldn't be practical, but I don't know.
I have so many impractical packages on my shelf. I can add another.
So this is the inside, and again, it's kind of cool because we do get like an inner image here. The discs. I do definitely, I think you do as well, prefer this sort of style, like the gatefold style here. So this does have a digital copy that's not in there, but yours will have it. And yeah, so gosh, I really like the first season a lot. I mean, the first season did have, I think, some issues, but overall I really enjoyed it. And there was things that I really did like about this season. I really like how they sort of tease Doomsday, but then you get Bizarro Superman. And like I want to try to keep this really spoiler free, but I think that's so well known at this point. I can't imagine that that's going to be a spoiler for anybody. But yeah, I think my biggest issue here is I never really connect with this, like the interpersonal plot lines that I think just sort of drag stuff down, like the more interesting aspects of the show. Again, there are elements that I really like. I think Bizarro Superman was fun. I think the effects were pretty good. I mean, especially when you kind of consider like the CW sort of DC stuff, you know, it looks fairly well, like in a nice polished way. But again, I just think that it could have used a more like streamlined, like just overall sort of narrative. Like I do not care about the stuff with Lois's sister. Like to me, I know it again, I'm trying to be vague purposely, but like I know it pays off, but again, it just meh.
Yeah. I don't think this is a spoiler, but like her plot line involves like some like culty stuff, and it just really wears out its welcome. I think everything that's in this season would have been better off if like it was the first half of this, like that was the first arc of the season, and then it evolved. But they stretched things out throughout a whole season, which did not need to be stretched out. It was taxing after a while.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I didn't think the first season was flawless, but I definitely really liked it. And now I didn't hate this season.
Mhm.
I did binge through it fairly quickly, and it was a pretty easy watch, but I just think it could do better. And I'm still looking forward to the next season though.
Absolutely. I think the first season was like a big surprise for me because I'm like seeing so much Superman stuff, and I was like, what can they bring to this? But it was like a very like a shot of like adrenaline to the CW lineup, which has kind of been like inconsistent in recent years. But then this one, like I said, it's not terrible by any means, but just it's a step down from that first season, especially since it's just there's so many elements that they're trying to work with, and they almost just kind of one of my big problems with it is they just kind of seem to leave behind Superman a little bit. Like you could just
Yeah.
kind of like, where is he in this episode, basically? Because he's just like not appearing on screen for large portions of the time, and it's just wild. And while I do appreciate some of the other plot lines, like I said, they do stretch things out a little bit too much for my liking, at least.
Yeah.
I can I say something I really did like though?
Mm.
This involves the Bizarro stuff. This isn't spoiling stuff, but they do stuff with the music and like with like Bizarro music, which is really fun, which I thought was a nice touch.
Yeah. And it's so funny because so I don't know if you've watched much C Lab 2021.
Yeah, it's been a while, but yeah, I
Um,
used to be a fan.
there's a little like Bizarro character that's just do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, with the eye patch.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So like it's so funny because like reflex, I like hear that little creature thing's voice, and it's so like shrill and annoying, but he says Bizarro over and over again, so it's and always in my head. But yeah, I think it's still definitely worth checking out. I am really excited about the third season.
Absolutely. Yeah, I this show, like I said, it's the second season was by no means like a train wreck. It's just uh we want better for it.
Yeah, do better.
Yeah. Kind of continuing along those quality lines, but this is worse, unfortunately. Um, this is a film I don't expect many people in our audience will like be super invested in this, but I was kind of interested. This is Lionsgate's release of Mack and Rita
Mm.
with Diane Keaton and Elizabeth Lail and Taylor Page. And I know we differ sometimes, and like I'm more of like the like kind of the you call yourself like you say I describe you as like the grouch, and I'm like kind of like into like the heartwarming and all that stuff. But I think we both find a healthy medium. And with this one, I wanted just kind of like that like nice heartwarming, kind of mindless, but in a good way, like comedy. And this delivers somewhat. It's not a complete disaster, but it's also a disappointment. And this is Diane Keaton in a body swap movie. And the conceit of this is that Elizabeth Lail here, she plays a character who has always kind of felt like an old soul, like she's always been like felt older than she is, and that's kind of taken to the extreme of like how she acts around her friends, and she's just kind of like, oh, I don't want to like go out to this concert or all that type of stuff. But then it ends up through means, I won't spell it out, but there's actually it's not a body swap necessarily. It's more of like a big situation where she
Hmm.
kind of becomes like an older version of herself, which is Diane Keaton, and she has to kind of exist as this older lady who she calls herself like her name's Mac. She says her name is like her Aunt Rita, so she pretends to be her own Aunt Rita, who's like, so she's in this older woman's body, and she gets to like interact with her friends and stuff, and comedy ensues and stuff. Like, look at this old woman getting into situations where she like she's dancing all weird, and she's falling over and stuff like that. So there are things that I do like about this. I think Diane Keaton does a really nice job. Like she's a very gifted comedian, and she has a very specific brand of humor that I appreciate. Even some of her like lesser like revered movies I liked. There was this movie where she was like a cheerleader, like senior cheerleaders called Poms from a few years ago, which I found actually kind of heartwarming, but it was like eviscerated by critics. So in that vein, like I also kind of enjoyed this, but it also wasn't amazing. So if you want to see Diane Keaton like kind of like be zany and kooky and like pretend to be like a young person in her body and blah blah blah, like it kind of delivers. It's just not the best version of what it could have been. I see what they're doing, and like it's not terrible, but it's not great. So Mack and Rita, like this Blu-ray, it looks good. It's a brand new movie. It looks great. It sounds good. It's got a couple of brief featurettes, and I think this will probably be a rental or streaming option at best for most people. But if you're really in the mood for like that kind of like general heartwarming stuff, Mack and Rita, it's okay, but it's not the best.
It sounds like it's no Mac and Me.
Well, given its reputation, I haven't seen Mac and Me, but I just know that it's supposed to be terrible. So we'll
Yeah.
see.
Mac and Me is kind of fun, terrible. So I'm gonna turn this train around a little bit to something
All
that
right.
I was really looking forward to, and it really did not disappoint, and that is By Candlelight from Kino Studio Classics. And this is it's not a horror movie from James Whale, but you know, it is a James Whale film, and it is awesome, and I was really looking forward to checking that out. So yeah, this is one that was definitely kind of on my radar because I'm like fairly familiar with James Whale's filmography, especially like some deep cuts. And so this one is like a title I've often seen and been really curious about. So I was very excited when they announced that this was going to be re-released. So James Whale directs this breezy, I would call it like a farce-laden rom-com, but you can definitely see the director injects his signature wry sense of humor, and there's enough wit and sophistication here that I think even Ernst Lubitsch, that is, would be proud of. So it's definitely one of those comedy of error kind of things where everything would just be fixed if people would just talk to each other, but
Yeah.
that doesn't happen because comedy. And it's this like mistaken identity trope that is pretty like much a 30s sort of tried and true formula, but it works. It's not particularly deep, but it's a fun movie. And gosh, is this well shot. The camera, just the camera shots and the camera movement in particular is so expressive, especially for the early 30s. You don't often kind of see like shots that are like so well thought out. Like there's some gliding camera situations that are like really just impressive when you stop to think like this was when we were still kind of pioneering these like tricks and techniques. They're not groundbreaking today, but you have to kind of consider the time that it was made. Yeah, it's just really a fun sort of it's not particularly deep, as I said. It's very much like, you know, they mistake the butler for like this prince and like or the like very like high royalty, but it's he's a poor guy, and yeah, it's just kind of wacky. It's like again, it's not one of those that has a lot of meaning to it, but it's fun. Again, it sort of reminded me of like something akin to maybe like the Thin Man movies. But yeah, it's a good time, and I really do love the commentary track. I had the chance to actually talk to Troy a bunch, and his commentary is really amazing. Like I did watch this 2 times, once for the movie and then once for the commentary track because I had not seen this prior. So, Troy does a really great job of really talking a lot about Whale, about his like background. Whale's story is so interesting. They of course made like a biopic with Brendan Fraser, who I'm glad is making a pretty great comeback. But yeah, this it's charming. Like I said, it's like I'm not really getting into a lot of plot because there really isn't a lot of plot to get into, honestly. It's just, like mistaken identity comedy that's very by the numbers, but it's well shot, it's well directed. The cast is great. Paul Lucas is fantastic. Film buffs will remember him from The Lady Vanishes, which I think is like one of my all-time favorite Hitchcock films. So yeah, it is not a classic by any means, but gosh, it is such a fun time.
Yeah, whenever I saw that there was a new James Well announced by Kino Classics, I was like, "Ooh, Mike is definitely going to be covering this one." And I think I saw that it comes from a new 4K scan of the
Yep.
negative, if I'm not mistaken, which that's always excellent.
Yeah, no, it does look really great, and as it says in the back, this is sourced from a original 35 millimeter print, and um, I'm assuming that this was maybe something like Universal did or like oversaw, but yeah, it really does look fantastic. It's um certainly as pristine as you might expect from like a nice 4K thing. It's not perfect, but like the grain levels are consistent. The black and white contrast is really well done, and you can just overall see a lot of like details in like the costumes, the sets. So they did a really fantastic job.
Yeah, that's awesome. I definitely recommend people seek that one out. Moving on to my next one. This I think it's the closest I get to like a steamy title this week. But it's one that really took me by surprise. I really did like this. This is The Last Romantic Lover
Hmm.
from Cult Epics. Um, yeah. So I will show off the inner artwork, but I will just say NSFW for not safe for work. So here's a lady that's naked and just in the throes of pleasure. And whenever I opened this up and I saw this, I was like, oh, okay, it's another movie like that I'm getting myself into. But it's not actually. There is some skin, but there's not as much as some titles I've talked about, and it's not an exploitation movie by any means. This is a French movie. The basic concept is Dale Haddon, this lady right here. She plays. I believe she works for a magazine. It's either that or a television station. I was kind of blanked whenever they said it, but they're holding a kind of like a contest, or she has the idea for a contest called The Last Romantic Lover, where she's like basically soliciting men to submit themselves of just are there any like men who are still out there who are like really like romantic and like classically like the ideal man, basically. So you have all these people submitting themselves in order to win like $30,000, I believe it is. And one of these people is her co-lead, played by Gerard Ismail. This guy here, he works for the circus. I think he's a lion tamer, but he wears a lot of hats like in the circus. And the circus, I think, has just recently fallen on hard times, and they need him to win this contest in order to save the circus and save like his whole family, work family, his lived-in family. So the first half of the movie is kind of that contest and him reluctantly agreeing to do this because he hates like this whole artifice of everything. So he's very like hesitant to like engage with it. But once he does get into the contest and everything, he starts to have an interesting dynamic with the lead actress, and they eventually get into a situation where it's like one of those situations like if you win, you get to also like we'll give you money and we'll pay for you to take any woman of your choice uh, on like a vacation or whatever, and he chooses her. And they're kind of like it's like an unlikely romance in the second one where they're both or she's kind of resistant to him and he's just kind of trying to mess with her, but then sparks start to fly and stuff. It's a really interesting like as the title would have you believe, like it's actually a pretty romantic movie. Yes, there are times where it's just like, oh, it's kind of like a silly plot contrivance of like you're forcing someone to like be in your presence and then like oh but then love blooms, but like it's handled really well. Like it's not like an automatic like they lay the groundwork of like there is some resistance but there's like a little bit of like playfulness between them throughout, and I don't know, it just really evolves in a way that really works for me. And like it's just like uh I wouldn't say like it's a completely heartwarming movie, but I was kind of moved and just like it's just a nice romance that was kind of like atypical, but like worked within a formula that I don't know, it really worked for me. I like I said, I wasn't expecting a ton from this, but it really surprised me. So this release, it comes from a new 4K scan of the original 35 camera negative, and it looks really nice. There's not a lot of print damage. Like I didn't see any like nicks or scratches or anything of that sort. Like the density, like it holds up really well. Color saturation's really nice. I believe there's like two separate audio tracks. I think there's like an original track and like a remastered track. I didn't completely spot like all the differences, but I think there are a couple options. And there are also some nice interviews with some of the talent. There is a audio commentary, an interview with the director, and then an interview with the star Dale here. So there's also like a presentation at like a French cinema, like them reintroducing the movie after all these years. It's a pretty stacked release that I haven't watched a lot from cult epics, but the care that they put into this release, it makes me want to seek out more of their stuff, especially since I responded also so positively to the narrative itself. So Last Romantic Lover, did really like this. It was one of my best surprises of the week. So yeah, I recommend that if anyone finds the plot remotely interesting.
Nice. That does sound pretty interesting. Definitely another movie that hasn't been on my radar, but looks like it should be. So
Yeah.
I also have a sexy title. I don't know, in this sexy off who wins. I mean, maybe everybody wins.
The audience wins. Yeah.
But this is The Horrible Sexy Vampire.
Ooh.
Mondo Macabro, and let's check out the back here. Yeah, so I don't know if you can see like the photos on the back here, but yeah, so this is another title that completely just like I had never even heard of. Probably like most people. And it's kind of a mixed bag. I will say there's a lot of things that I liked about this movie. In particular, I love how it's shot. I think that, and really, this should be just a shorthand for any director. If you want to make your movie really atmospheric, just shoot it in the wintertime.
Yeah.
Like that is such a easy kind of shortcut to make everything look a little bit creepy and beautiful, and they really do that particularly well here. And yeah, I think that it does have everything you would kind of want from a movie titled like this. There is a lot of nudity. There's a lot of like vampire shenanigans. It's not. What's surprising is it's not particularly gory. Like it's not kind of crazy over the top. That could be good if you're not into that. That could be not great if you're kind of looking for something that's a little more gory. This does sort of play it a little bit safe. I did not like how this sort of bogs itself down in like a crime procedural kind of, like there is like a detective checking out this like these series of disappearances, and of course we know what's going on, so it's just kind of a mechanic that we don't, I think, is a little bit overused, and it doesn't really move anything forward. And honestly, I watched this like twice, and it sort of just like feels like not a lot happens. Like
Mm-hmm.
things, do you know what I'm saying? Like things are happening, but they're kind of forgettable. Like
Yeah.
I'm glad I took some notes because honestly, it didn't really, there was like there's nothing that really like stuck with me. I mean, there is some nice surreal imagery. I did love the winter setting, like I said, but yeah, it's just it's kind of there. But I will say it does deliver on the sexiness. I mean,
Good. Good.
relatively speaking, I mean it's what year was this? From 1971, so sexy in a relatively speaking 70s vibe. This comes from a brand new 4K transfer. Mondo is always great because they do provide a lot of excellent extras. And in particular, there is the audio commentary track, as you can see down there, and it also has a animated press book, which I thought was pretty fun and kind of an unusual special feature. But it's nice because it does, I mean, especially the commentary track really does give you a lot of like background, not only in the making of the film, but like in a cultural sense,
Mhm.
which I really appreciate. So I will say, watching it again with the commentary track, it did help me appreciate aspects of it, but it might be for a lot of people or some people, it just did not really connect with me. But that's all right.
Yeah. So anyone who's a scaredy cat out there, like my wife, she'd be safe watching this.
Yeah, it's certainly like it's in, I mean, like I know there's like certain things that like I can't show my husband because he doesn't like anything gory or if it's like kind of disturbing. So this is really neither of those things. It is very kitschy, and I do kind of like that aspect of it, but it's all right.
All right. Uh, Moving on to my obligatory rock doc, which I do every couple of weeks. This is Randy Rhoads' reflection of a guitar icon, courtesy of NBD and BMI.
Mm.
This is narrated by Tracy Guns of Guns N' Roses and LA Guns. And it it tells the story of Randy Rhoads, who tragically died when he was 25 in a plane crash. But he was like already at that level. Like he was involved in so many like great projects. He was a guitarist for Ozzy Osbourne. He was in Quiet Riot, and just the level of his output in his young life, like he played on like the Blizzard of Oz and like a bunch of like very like pivotal records in like the rock and like heavy metal scene. um it's just, this is a really interesting documentary of like, I'm not completely familiar, like I do learn a lot of my rock history through like documentaries like this, even though like I know a lot about music history, but then there's still certain pockets where I just like, it's good to have that extra like source of just this context from people who like knew him and like explaining to people like me who may not be familiar like why he was so great, why his like loss is such a tragedy to the music scene, and like what he could have possibly accomplished if he would have like just like kept still been with us till this day. And I get a lot of great people here talking about him. They have Ozzy on, and who else? I think they have some people from crap. I'm forgetting. Uh, cut that. But they have a lot of great talent on here, and it's just really, especially to hear someone like Ozzy talk about like how, like why he was, because like you hear Ozzy and he's like front and center, but like why he was such like a beating heart to that band. It's just such a really well-rounded documentary. And so if you're a rock fan, if you're a fan of him or just want to learn more about like this scene and like the talent, Randy Rhoads, Reflections of a Guitar Icon, this is a really strong movie. And this Blu-ray, it looks really nice. It's a recent documentary, so it has like a good mixture of like newer interviews and like vintage footage. There's some bonus features, like some additional like longer interviews with people and some like never before seen vintage footage from like the Quiet Riot days that are, it's really intriguing and like really cool for fans. So if you're a fan of Randy Rhoads, or like I said, it's a good release.
Nice. I think the older I get, also the more I appreciate a quiet riot. Like riot, yes,
Yeah,
but
but
just keep it down a little bit.
yeah.
So no, that does sound great, and I did talk to Ace from LA Guns, so that's probably something that
I want to mention just one thing real quick. I was struggling to pull a name there, and my brain kept saying like, say Duran Duran. And I was like, that's not who this member was from. It was Van Halen. Sorry,
okay.
Like I completely just blanked on that. I was just like, who is this?
Yeah, no problem. We can get, I mean, we can cut this out, but we can get we can edit around that, and maybe we can swap that out. But yeah, no, that sounds great. It definitely sounds like something that again, I like you, there's like areas of music that I'm not familiar with, so that sounds pretty awesome. My next one was actually a really fun surprise, and this was something that I got to see a little bit before it streamed, and it was really fun to see like fans' reactions to it, and that is my little friend Esther here and
Yes.
Orphan First Kill. So first of all, let's show off. I really like this cover.
Yeah.
Because that ties into the movie, like the color scheme. But so unfortunately it looks like this is bare bones, but take a look at it. And no reversible cover art. But yeah, so I thought this was a lot of fun. I love the first film. I think it is like maybe one of my favorite movies maybe ever. I mean, it's so campy and fun, but even when you kind of know the big plot twist, it's still a really good time. So I was really curious like what a prequel would do like for the franchise, and it's so weird that this is a franchise even, but it's a wonderful cheesy outing that is a little bit by the numbers at times, but it has such a great twist that I honestly did not see coming. I know I've seen like other people say, "Oh yeah, like I kind of guessed that," but I did not. I'm gonna keep it spoiler free, but there is a really sort of like mid movie like twist that really uh works with the rest of the movie. It does, and it's sort of like not a twist that's unearned, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like it really is sort of set up and paid off really well. This is really interesting because my friend Kareem actually was the DP on this, so he was able to talk a lot about the look of this movie, which is really sort of over like the aperture I think was like turned up like maybe as high as he's ever had it. So it kind of gives it this like lifetime movie sort of look and feel to it.
Mm.
And I think he was saying that there was a lot of tricks that they had to use to sort of like make Esther look younger because,
Mhm.
you know, this is a prequel, but she's older than she was in the first film. So there was a lot of like camera angles. Like he was telling me that there was a lot of like different perspective sort of trickery, just all these kind of, I think they used like a stunt double. So it was really fascinating, all the like little things that they tried to do to sort of pull this off. And but I liked it. It's not by any means a perfect film. It is like very, I will say it is, I don't know, they don't really kind of see her right there, but I don't know,
Mhm.
it is very distracting because she clearly looks like she doesn't look like a child. She looks like she's 20s, you know, because she
Yeah.
is. But I think if you can get around that fact and just go with it, it is such a weird, bonkers, wonderful, campy kind of film. And I enjoyed it a lot. And I really like because I was a little bit worried because I didn't know if fans were just going to cannibalize this movie, but the initial reaction was everybody really loved it. Like
Mhm.
on Twitter, everyone was kind of like just going nuts about how much they enjoyed it because the big thing is it kind of knows that it's silly and absurd and campy, and it plays that up in a way that I think is pretty smart. So I liked it. Again, this is a newer film, so the transfer looks nice. It does have a really weird, interesting look. And if y'all want to check out my interview with Kareem, I will make sure to link that in the description so he can kind of talk more about what actually went into the look of the film. But yeah, it's a fun time. I really enjoyed it. I am so glad this got a home video release
Mhm.
and a Blu-ray at that. So yes, more of that, please.
Absolutely. I just recently came into Paramount Plus, so I haven't been able to watch this, but I'll probably just watch the
Hmm.
Blu-ray instead. So I don't have a lot to say about the new movie, but just one like personal anecdote. I've told you, I believe I told you this previously, like through Twitter, but I met my wife. The first
Mhm.
time we met was on Halloween, like years ago. It was like 13 years ago now. And that night we went to a Halloween party and we watched the first Orphan movie, and that was like the night
Mhm.
we first met. So the
Oh,
Orphan
nice.
franchise has kind of like a soft spot in my heart.
That's awesome. Well, that sounds kind of like a perfect time to watch the second one and maybe rewatch the first one. Yeah, no, that's such a cool story. I know you did tell me that before, but thank you for sharing that again.
Yeah, just I wanted just a personal anecdote for our audience, so they
Yeah.
know the weird circumstances and where I met my wife.
No, that's awesome. I honestly can't think of a better story of meeting someone. So,
You gotta love it. Moving on to, I'm going back to another Kino Classics title. This is a 1939 title called When Tomorrow Comes,
mm,
with Charles Boyer and Irene Dunn. And so uh, I just kind of, I think it's mostly been this year. I've been getting into Charles Boyer a lot,
mm,
and just like a lot of his films have just been coming out the Kino Classics, what I really appreciate. I reviewed, or maybe one of us reviewed Backstreet. I think it was me a few months ago, which was like a really solid melodrama. And this one is kind of in the same vein. There's romance, and then there's like sadness throughout through their circumstances. The basic conceit of this one is Charles. He plays like unbeknownst to anyone at the beginning, he plays kind of like a world class pianist, and he goes into a diner one day, and he meets this waitress who is kind of like in the midst of her own little like workplace drama where they're trying to attempt to unionize, but that's kind of like a side plot. But there's kind of like this meet cute at the restaurant, and they start developing a romance, and eventually through circumstances, I don't want to like go plot by plot, but they have a nice romance that eventually has some obstacles that pop up. And I will let viewers learn that if they decide to watch that. But it's a classic melodrama where it's just like two people meet. There's like a really whirlwind courtship. You really feel like their romance blooming and their longing, and then something comes out of nowhere and like threatens to wreck it. It's a really this one's really well done. Their chemistry was very believable. I really like the chemistry between Boyer and Irene Dunn. Irene Dunn is like a very luminous presence in this movie. She just like really like shines on screen. I really like. I don't think I've seen a lot of her, but like I want to explore more of her movies after seeing this one. And hopefully, like similar to Charles, maybe Kino will just like start pumping those out. And I'll be like, oh yeah, now I need to seek her out. But yeah, it's a really solid movie. It's not overly long. It's 90 minutes, so like goes pretty quickly. It doesn't like draw things out unnecessarily. And by the end of the movie, like I mean, I was sad, but I was also kind of like I felt like inspired a little bit. So it was like it's a nice balance. Like it's a little bit bittersweet, which I always love. So this one comes from a new 2K scan of a 2K master scan, and it looks pretty nice. Like there's still some like nicks and little scratches here and there, but the overall the print looks really like nice and clean. The black and white like fluctuation. It's really there's no fluctuation actually. It's really a solid like the contrast and everything is just really like nice. So this comes with an audio commentary from Lee Gambin and costume historian Alyssa Rose. I always like their dynamics with one another. They've been doing a lot of commentary tracks that I've checked out this year. And this is just another Kino Classics collaboration with Universal. So I'm glad that they're just continuing to pump out some of those classic Universal melodramas. So if you are a fan of the old school melodramas, When Tomorrow Comes, that's a solid one. It's a solid addition to the genre.
Nice. Yeah, when you were talking, I was trying to think about like what movies from Irene Dunn that I've seen. I know I've seen some of her other films.
The Awful Truth is listed on the back as like her major one,
Okay.
which I know Criterion put that one out.
Yeah, but no, that sounds great. I really adore these like old like comedies and melodramas that they've been putting out. So keep them coming. Love that stuff.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of times there's always like titles that sort of like catch me off guard in a really good way, and I discover, and I really feel excited to sort of share with everybody, and like stuff that is maybe like under the radar. And Karmalink is definitely that title. This is from Kino, so we're staying in the Kino family here. And yeah, no special features you can see. So have you seen this?
No, I haven't yet.
Because I was going to say, I think the best way to sort of describe it to somebody is it's a really nice mix of like Goonies or Stranger Things meets The Matrix.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So and by that I kind of mean you have like a group of likable kids, and they set off on this adventure, and it's this really interesting fusion of like their culture and religion and future tech all just sort of like fused together, and it's really wild. It's one of those movies I will say you have to be like you can't be on your phone, you can't be on anything while you're watching it. You have to have your full kind of brain on it. But I think the reward is a really interesting, very emotional, like holy crap, there's moments where this movie just gets you. And I think, yes, I am a little bit of a cynic, I am a little bit of a grouch, but like I do have an open heart, especially when it comes to stuff like this. And I actually think you would love this movie. it's really interesting because it starts out very almost documentary like, and by that I mean like the filmmaker seemed to like use a lot of like natural settings. Everything feels, I don't believe it was ad-libbed, but it just has that feeling of like the like, especially like the banter with the kids amongst
Mhm.
themselves really feels authentic. And you get a lot of like moving camera shots, you get a lot of like handheld stuff. So I like how it doesn't like hit you right away with that like weird, surreal, beautiful, like, and it's very strange. But it sort of like slowly introduces this world of like old school traditions meets like very high tech, and it's like a beautiful blending of those two. And then the movie just gets kind of crazy. and, and I loved it. I thought it was such a great journey to go on, and it's one of those movies that like the pacing just clips along like in a really great way. But again, you really want to have your full attention on it. So I loved it. Again, I don't want to give away how it ends, but it's just a really beautiful movie. And like the cinematography and the visuals is stunning. I loved it.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's one I was really looking forward to. The premise sounded very interesting to me, so I'm definitely gonna have to check that one out.
Yeah, I definitely, I was thinking like when I was taking my notes, I was like, you would really like this.
You know me, you're usually right. So yeah, definitely gonna check that one out soon. Moving on, my next title. This is from IFC Films and RLJE, and this is Hold Your Fire. This is another documentary, and this one it's really impressive. Um, it can be a little bit of a tough watch. Like the subject matter is intense, but it is very good. It basically it takes place, or it chronicles a event that took place in Brooklyn in 1973, where there was a attempt. Um, there was an attempt to steal guns from this store by like these group of men, and it led to like a hostage situation, and it actually ended up turning into one of the first situations where there was like a hostage negotiator and like those kind of tactics implemented, because there happened to be an officer on scene who was like well versed in psychology and just kind of like put themselves into that situation of trying to de-escalate things at a time where like some of like that cops like that officers like colleagues were a little bit more like keyed up and want to be like, all right, let's do this, let's basically like let's bust some skulls, we need to like crush this basically, whereas like he was trying to like keep tensions down and like not make a bad situation worse. So it kind of like really delves into that from like a lot of different perspectives, because a lot of those people are still around today, and you actually get some point of view from like the perpetrators and some like the hot like the like people who are held hostage and everything, and like people on both sides. And it's really intense because this documentary, it's like putting a spotlight on like police tensions of the time, and also kind of drawing parallels to how we handle certain conflicts at the like in the modern age. But then you're also given context as to like why they committed this crime in the past, and like what was going on in these people's lives that they felt like, why were they stealing guns? There is a specific reason that they felt they needed guns, like they themselves felt they were in danger. I won't really like go into that, you can watch the movie if you're interested. But they give a reason for this, but they don't excuse what they did. And you get some of that from some of the interviews in the modern day. Like you get to hear from some of the people who were involved, but they never excuse what they did. They're not saying like, oh, they were like good guys caught in a bad situation. Like, no, they did something bad, but also there is a another point to the story to also consider. So it's like it's a more morally complex like than just like finger pointing, which I really appreciate. And you do get some really fascinating interviews, and like some people say some things that are like, oh, I'm not sure if you realize like what kind of light this paints you in, like that you're like commenting on it from this way. And then you also get to see like some of the trauma, like hear about some of the trauma that people who were like held hostage have held onto over those years of like being held hostage is like a traumatizing situation. And just seeing like how that has impacted their lives ever since the 70s, like it's really a lot to dig into, but it's really rewarding if that interests you. And this documentary is just really well constructed. And there's a lot of really great footage because this was such a high profile like an incident. There's a lot of news crews on scene, so you get a lot of different points of view and everything. It's a really stellar documentary. It's like there's a reason it has this Rotten Tomatoes seal of approval. It's a really good documentary. There's not really any special features on this, but I think the content is so good that I still recommend anyone who's interested in that type of documentary to seek it out. Hold Your Fire. It's a really just powerful documentary.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds really interesting. And I I think what's most interesting is, as you say, they give you different points of view, and I always love when you can have a documentary that's very objective, and you get all the angles. So yeah, definitely need to check that out. So my next title, so my last two titles are going to be horror related, because October. And this is one that I think a lot of people are going to be, I mean, especially people that are really interested in like classic horror is going to be interested in. And that is The Mark of the Vampire with Bela Lugosi. And there is a commentary track. I do not recall. I want to say this track was ported over from the previous release. Like I know when I talked about Jekyll and Hyde, there was a brand new commentary that was later was confirmed that it was brand new and recorded for that release. So yeah. Have you seen this one?
Not yet. No, I really want to.
Yeah, it's okay. So it's good. I've seen it many times, and it's interesting because this is a remake of the infamous lost film London After Midnight. And Mark of the Vampire has a lot of really good stuff going for it. It has great atmosphere. Carol Borland is iconic as the undead ghoul. And of course, you have Bela Lugosi wonderfully hamming it up in a Dracula-like character. But if I'm being honest, for all the spooky charms, this movie lacks a real developed script. And I think the mystery stretches logic even as movies go. And I try to not engage in what is called like bad faith criticism, where you can't suspend disbelief and you have to sort of nitpick every little thing. But this kind of goes beyond that. Like when you really start thinking about it, things don't really make sense on a fundamental logical sense. So yeah. But yeah, because like it's just needlessly convoluted, and I really can't say much about the ending because I don't want to give it away. But when you do see it and you start thinking about it, it's like, oh, that really is dumb and overly complicated. And yeah. But again, it is fun. I mean, there is a reason why I've seen it like multiple times. But yeah, it's not something that like I would like go to. Like I have it was a box set that has like this and Dr. X and Mad Love and Mask of Fumont. Fumont. Oh my god, why can I not say that?
The Manchu.
Fu Manchu, yes. My tongue was like, nope, that's not happening.
Yeah.
Yes, but so not everything's been released from that. Like I know Devil Doll's not. There's The Return of Dr. X, which weirdly has Humphrey Bogart. I think that was supposed to actually be Boris Karloff, but anyways. But it's nice because we are getting one more movie closer to having all of those in that set. So this is a really nice commentary track. Again, I don't recall off the top of my head if this is new or ported over, but either way, you got it. And this really looks fantastic again. Visually, it is a really nice sort of atmospheric, spooky movie. Like it opens in a graveyard. You gotta love that. um, again, the actress playing the I forget what they call her, but she's like the ghoul undead bride or whatever. But you find out things are not as they seem. Again, I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, it's really well done though. Again, Warner Archive really sets the bar really high for their transfers. Again, their Jekyll and Hyde was absolutely stunning, and this is no exception. This is a black and white film, so the black and white contrast is really nice. There was really no artifacts or scratches that I could really see. I mean, if they are, they're very minor, and yeah, I was just really impressed. I recently watched this and King Kong, the new King Kong that was re-released, or the original. And I mean they're both just really fantastic. Like Warner Archive really puts a lot of love into their transfers, and yeah, this is definitely a step up from the previous DVD release, which again I have and I've seen a bunch. So yeah, it's a good time. It's just maybe not one of my favorites.
Well, I still look forward to putting it into my Halloween viewing this year. So, yeah, thank you, Warner Archive. I am also ending my titles with one that's kind of seasonally appropriate. I think so. This is from Full Moon Features, and this is Trancers on 4K Ultra HD.
Hmm.
This is actually my first title, I believe, that I've ever seen from this label. And I was a little hesitant. I've heard like online a lot of people kind of criticize them and say they don't really have like the best encodes. So I was a little so whenever they made I'm pretty sure this is their first 4K. So whenever they announced this 4K, I saw people be like, ooh, I don't know how they're going to like fare with 4K. And I will say this isn't a terrible release by any means, but I do see where there is probably some failure in the encoding, even on this 4K disc. The grain seemed a little bit unnatural at times, or like overly gritty, like more compression than grain sometimes. So I did see like some like fluctuations in quality that I think could have been like a little bit more like better fine tuned, but I think overall it's a solid release for fans of this film. Especially so I had never seen this one before, and this one basically the easy pitch would be it's kind of like the Terminator, but a little bit different. This takes place in the 23rd century, and there is like a cop who is pursuing a fugitive, and he's been like pursuing him for a long time. But there is this drug where like if you inject it, it allows you to like basically travel back in time and like into the body of one of your ancestors. And the fugitive, they take this drug and like go back in time to like the 1980s, and this cop decides to do the same thing in order to like pursue him, because this guy, he's I'm not sure the verb of this, but he is like creating slash trancing people, trancers. He's creating trancers or whatever. He's like basically doing stuff to people that causes them to like turn into maniacs, basically. But like they're like hidden from view, but once they're exposed, they basically go crazy. So the cop travels back in time and decides to, or after killing the body of the dude in the future, so he can't go back to the future. So he traps him in the past. That's kind of convoluted, but that's basically it. So it's basically future people in the 1980s coming back and trying to like save or protect the future from a madman type of thing. And this is kind of like whenever he gets back to the 1980s, you're introduced to a very young Helen Hunt, who is like the girlfriend of like his ancestor that he jumps into. And it's really interesting to see her like in this kind of role, like early role. She plays kind of like a punk rock girl, and who's kind of like unsure of what's happening to her boyfriend, who's just like suddenly got a new personality and doesn't know what the hell's going on. So that dynamic's kind of fun, but it's an okay like sci-fi movie. It's not the best I've ever seen, but there's like some entertaining moments. There's some odd editing sequences. Like there are times where it's like they're like formulating a plan, and then they're like, okay, this is what we're gonna do, and then like a half a cut later, it'll jump to like the plan already in action, and you're like, whoa, what is going like near the end of the plan, I was like, what happened to all the stuff like before that? It's I don't know, it's weird, but it's also this movie is very short. It's like 76 minutes. It was surprisingly short, but I mean, it went by quickly. But it's an okay movie. It's not to the level of like the Terminator or anything, but it's entertaining. It's like a kind of pulpy sci-fi film, and the release itself, it looks okay. It sounds nice, and it has some good special features. It has a commentary from the director and the star. It has a video essay, and it has a making of documentary. So it has some decent special features if you are a fan. One of my favorite things about this is the cover art. I think it's really cool. I just like the movie itself doesn't really like live up to it, but it's okay, just not amazing.
Yeah, I don't believe I've seen that one. I get this mixed up with Doll Man. That's a wild one. Have you seen that one?
I have not.
Yeah. I don't want to it's so yeah, God, it's so insane. You should look it up, and maybe if they do like a 4K of that, we might be talking about that one. But yeah, that's when I saw that they were doing a 4K release, I was also one of those people that were very skeptical. And I kind of want to see if they do Tourist Trap in 4K, because that's like one of my all-time favorites. That's such a weird, grimy 70s film that is just amazing. So, but that was a little that there was a some home video releases of that were very kind of controversial. So yeah. So my last title is horror, and I was kind of saving. I don't know if I would say this is the best for last, but this is certainly one that I was very excited for, and that was Happy Birthday to Me. Gotta
Love that cover art.
Cover art, yep. And so this does have extras, and it is worth noting that I believe all of these are exclusive to this release and not just ported over from a previous release. I know that Mill Creek did this a few times on Blu-ray, but I believe that their release was bare bones. So we got a slipcover, really nice. And no reversible art, just a disc. But yeah, so I love this cover, and there is a scene like this, although it's sort of like not really, like they don't use this exact thing is kind of weird. But yeah, so you've never seen this, but it is fascinating. It's one of those attempts at, really, you can tell that they were trying to do a classy slasher, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
something that's a little more elevated, a little more polished. This certainly does have like a bigger budget in terms of like what you typically see from the slasher genre.
Mhm.
And you have like big names like Glenn Ford, Melissa Sue Anderson's not maybe a big name now, but I think at the time she was doing a Little House on the Prairie, so that
Oh
was
yeah.
kind of, she was a pretty big draw. So yeah, despite this movie kind of being a more like polished slasher film, it really does kind of lean into like what we think of as like slasher tropes, right? Like they have like a billion red herrings. You have of course like some pretty violent deaths, although they're not as like the tagline, it's not really that extreme, right? But it's good
Yeah.
marketing. But yeah, it's fine. It's my biggest problem with this movie is, as much as I like it and as charming and interesting as it is very long. Like it does not need to be nearly 2 hours. Like there's a lot of like filler that I think just would have been better to have trimmed out and made it a little more leaner and more
Mhm.
efficient. And I really have a problem with this like double twist ending. And it's never really like the I'm having a hard time because I don't want to spoil it, but there is a again, there's a twist, and then there's like a twist upon the twist, and the twist upon the twist isn't it comes out of nowhere because I believe there was some creative differences and they sort of mandated this change. So you can kind of tell that it feels out of place, and that's because it is. And like I said, I love this movie. I watch it every year on my birthday. Um, with this and Bloody Birthday is my usual double feature thing. But
Wow.
yeah, it's all right. I will say that comparing this to the Mill Creek transfer, I think this looks about the same. I would say maybe this looks better. I don't recall if they are using a new transfer or not. If somebody knows that for a fact, chime in in the comments and let me know. But as far as I know, I think it might be like the same transfer as Mill Creek, which I believe is sourced by the studio. And that's just to say it looks good. I mean, it really looks nice. I never had an issue with the milk, even though like Mill Creek gets a pretty, when we're talking about labels with reputations, they can be a little hit or miss. But I believe when it's like something from the studio, it's usually better because they are the ones doing the transfer. So
Mhm.
yeah, it looks really nice. There's a little bit of like times where it maybe looks a little faded at times, but it's really just not a lot, and it's not anything that I think is like distracting in any kind of way. And I loved getting into the commentary track. Like I said, I've seen this movie many times, so it was like fun to like listen to that. And yeah, this has a nice interview on it as well. So I always appreciate that. And again, it's not just dumped out like they obviously could have, like Mill Creek kind of just dumps stuff out. So we do get a lot of like really nice effort with Kino Studio Classics. So I really liked it. The movie is a little bit of a mixed bag, but I always think it's pretty fun. I think it's like cheesy and charming enough to sort of overlook some of its like issues.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would be definitely really curious to see what you think of it.
Yeah, I'll probably watch that sometime before Halloween, so I'll have to let you know.
Yeah, no, that's it's definitely fun. It certainly is like kind of the perfect time of year for it, because I mean it is one of those movies that it tries really hard, maybe a little, again, maybe a little bit too hard. So
Mm.
yeah, so I think that kind of does it. As always, the obligatory like, comment, subscribe. We have a lot more great stuff coming. And as always, just thanks for hanging out with us. Oh my gosh, take that again. Thanks for hanging out with us.